Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Politics on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimbaloye. We're reaching you live from our Benin studio in Edo State, where we have witnessed the end to the governorship election in Edo State for 2020. Thank you so much, everyone that has followed the coverage of Channels Television in these past few days. It's been some very interesting past days of a lot of intensity and a battle of wit between majorly two candidates that are not new to themselves in terms of politics. They were 4 years ago head-to-head. This time around, they went head-to-head, and one came victorious yet again. Godwin Obaseki of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, had emerged winner in the governorship election of Edo State 2020, with accredited voters in that race of about 557,443 voters, with a total valid votes of 537,407. APC polled 223,619, while PDP polled 307,955. The rejected vote is 12,000, while the total valid votes 537,407. The total votes cast is 550,000. That's just about a quarter of the permanent voter cards that were collected for this election of over 2 million potential voter in Edo State, of about 6 million residents and citizens of Edo State. Those are some of the figures that we have for you. Interesting scenario has been playing out. It was a vigil. A lot of people kept home and abroad, waiting to hear when the results will be announced after the election of Saturday, which lasted between 8:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m., a first major governorship election conducted by INEC in a COVID-19 period. The collation started just about 6 a.m. on a day after the election, earlier today, when the collation started. That was when the results started trickling in, one after the other, out of the 18 local government areas of Edo State. And the results started trickling in. But this is the moment when the chief returning officer for this election made the announcement, gave the figures out, and announced the winner in the Edo governorship election. Take a listen to him.
Obio L. Emmanuel of ADP had 2374 votes. Osiage Eze Iyamu of APC have 223,619 votes. 223,619 votes. Stephen N. Ozono of NRN had 573 votes. 573 votes. Godwin N. Obaseki of the PDP had 307,955. 307,955. Felix Obayakon of SDP had 323 votes. That Godwin N. Obaseki of PDP, having satisfied the requirement of the law in meeting the 25% in two-thirds of the local government area in the state, and having a margin of lead higher than the council votes, is hereby declared the winner and returned elected. Signed by myself. Today, 20 September 2020. Thank you, gentlemen of the press. You are right.
That is the chief returning officer there announcing the result earlier today. But we've been gathering some reactions to the outcome of the election. The opposition party in the state, the APC, is alleging that the election is skewed and they are deciding the next step of action. An extract from the statement from Mr. John Mayaki, who is the chairman of the APC media organization, reads, and I quote, it says, areas where we won, they cancelled them. They decreased the votes in areas we had advantage. They rejected our result and jacked up theirs. That is coming from the APC. But the number one citizen of the land has reacted also. That is President Muhammadu Buhari. He's also of the APC. The president has commended the electoral process in Edo State, reiterating his commitment to free and fair election. And these are some of the words of President Buhari in a statement today. The president said that my commitment to free and fair election is firm because without free and fair elections, the foundation of our political and moral authority will be weak. End of quote. That's President Muhammadu Buhari. But from the PDP, there are reactions also from the leader of the party and the chairman of the PDP, Uche Secondary. He has congratulated Godwin Obaseki. He said, quote, Edo people, by their dogged display on Saturday, were determined to take their collective destiny in their own hands, and for this, PDP is proud of them. Some other leaders of the party, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has also spoken about this. Former Senate President and Governor of Kwara State, Bukola Saraki, has spoken. Bukola Saraki said, okay, this is one is coming from Atiku Abubakar. He said, there is a new dawn in Edo State, and the hard-won victory of Governor Godwin Obaseki is not just a victory, but a declaration of, well, let's get some other reactions of independence from the anti-democratic forces of godfatherism. Let's get also reaction from the National Assembly. The minority leader, Undudi Elumelu, has also spoken about this election and the outcome. The minority leader has praised the people of Edo State for the courage they exhibited in coming out en masse, not only to vote, but also to protect their votes and monitor the process to the end. Ndudi Elumelu, who is representing the PDP as in the National Assembly, says he congratulated Governor Obaseki on re-election. These are some of the reactions coming from within the People's Democratic Party. Of course, it was jubilation in the camp of the PDP here. Governor Obaseki and his friends, some of the governors of the PDP, were jubilating earlier today. And that's the reaction at the moment when the earlier footage I played for you, when Governor Obaseki was announced the winner, this was the kind of reaction that greeted that announcement. Let me allow you to listen to Governor Obaseki and Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State to this election.
The great people of Edo State have spoken, and they have spoken loud and clear. We thank God Almighty and give Him all the glory for this victory. Thank you, President Muhammadu Buhari, for defending our democracy and allowing the Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, and the security services to perform their constitutional functions without interference. INEC and the security services have shown Nigerians and the world indeed that they are capable of conducting free and credible elections. Words fail me in saluting the timid supporters who displayed courage in the face of threats, intimidation, and brutalization. The collective will of Edo people made it possible for us to triumph over godfatherism. We thank you all. I am eternally grateful to my party, the People's Democratic Party, PDP. And my brother governors, not only for giving us the umbrella during our political storm, but for the hard work which has brought me back to office. Our success has reinforced my belief that there's nothing we cannot achieve as a people if we pull forces together and collectively call on God for support. In conclusion, I reiterate to all of you today that working with my deputy, the Right Honorable Philip Schreiber, we are committed to make Edo great again. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for your support. God bless Edo State. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
My colleagues, the governor of Delta State, the governor of Oyo State, even though he had just left, and all other people who served in the campaign council. I don't know how to thank them, but it was a teamwork. I also thank the governor for giving us the necessary support that had to lead to this victory. I want to say thank you. The press, you've done noble, you've done marvelous. A few hours ago, we were here to brief you on what was going on. I thank God thereafter the announcement came. And all those who worked in the campaign state in Edo State, we want to sincerely thank each and every one of you. Let me now formally introduce the newest governor.
There you go. Those are some of the sights and sounds of what happened earlier today in Benin City in the rank and file of the PDP. Let's make sense of what this means. Some will say, well, it's the end of an era and the beginning of a new political phase in Edo State. What does that mean for Godwin Obaseki? What does this mean for the APC and perhaps other political parties in the state? We've seen a lot and we've heard a lot in the campaign period. I have joining me tonight to discuss some of this issue is one of the people who stepped down for Godwin Obaseki during the primary. He's a member of the House of Representatives, Honorable Omorige Ogbede Hiyama. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. And he's also he served as a party agent today at the Collation Center. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Sheila.
And I have also Mr. Dan Osa Ogbege. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Perhaps I should begin with you. Your party is at the receiving end of the stick today. Your party lost. How does that feel?
Well, we are Democrats. We abide by the announcement made by INEC, even if we have a lot of reservations about what went on all over the state. There were well-crafted activities of PDP members in collusion with security agencies in many parts of Edo State to intimidate our members and to disenfranchise them, disallowing them from voting. Now, for instance, I can tell you that Right Honorable Patrick Asowere was arrested by the DSS from Delta State, ostensibly sent by the governor of Delta State. They went to his community where he votes.
Well, if you're making that allegations, when you're mentioning people's
that is
name,
what exactly.
You're on a national TV,
and they will come and
so when
defend
you're
themselves.
making those kind of allegations,
Yes.
you need to be able to substantiate. When you say somebody was sent by, were you there when they
I
sent
mentioned names, and they were DSS, max DSS from Delta State. And you know the role the governor of Delta State played in this election, right from campaign up to now.
How
Yes.
he sent them?
Because they came from Delta State.
You have?
Because they came from Delta State.
How did you know they came from Delta State?
Yeah, because they told him that they came from Delta State.
They told you.
And they were with him. So, the point we are making in this is that the boundary between Edo State and Delta ought to have been barricaded during this election. That the DSS were allowed to cross from Delta State to Edo State and come into our community, and for no reason picked up Honorable Patrick Asowere and took him in a bus and ensured that he did not vote, ensured that he was not available to motivate his members, those who work with him in his community. They brought him back much later when the election was over. So that is just an example of the intimidation many of our members got from a collusion of security agencies and PDP members. They were working on the authority or order or instruction of members of the PDP.
Those are the claims that you're making.
All over the
not
state.
Not necessarily that you have evidence to prove some of this.
Of course, there are evidence. There are evidence.
I have a feeling you're a lawyer.
I'm a lawyer, of course.
So you know the
I cannot speak without evidence.
All right. So let me allow Honorable Obedehama to come into this. For your party, this is victory for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does it feel? You step down, and now the man you step down for has won the race. The same question, how does it feel to you?
Sean, thank you again for having me. And Bege is a friend. It feels good. Like you said, I stepped down at the time of primaries for Governor Obaseki. And there's no better feeling I can have that at the end of the day, the same objective of getting PDP back to government house was sustained today by Governor Obaseki, and I was the agent. So it feels good. I think he should be congratulating me first for the victory. I think it's a good thing. We're happy.
How do you react to when the APC said today that the election is skewed against them and they are deciding, they will decide on the next step in the coming days?
For me, it's a bit strange. Why do I say that? Because leading up to the elections of yesterday, we heard all sorts that federal might. I accompanied the governor, Governor Godwin Obaseki, to have a meeting with the IG in Abuja because we were concerned about the federal might. But President Buhari has come out to congratulate Governor Obaseki, and he has also reiterated that his resolve to ensure free, fair, and credible elections in order to strengthen democratic processes and institutions, that is firm. What that means is that the president does acknowledge that even though he's from the APC, he does acknowledge that we had a very free and fair election. He also acknowledges the fact that INEC did a good job, and he has congratulated the governor. So talking about screwed, I'm not sure in what sense, because we were mindful of federal might. We are in opposition. Mind you...
You think this is perhaps the best election you have seen in a long time?
Absolutely. In systems and procedure.
Oh.
What do I mean?
Okay.
Voting yesterday took place at the polling units. And these elections were actually won right there. It was massive turnout. The people came around. They were resolute. They wanted to vote. And they stayed back to defend their vote. INEC came up with an innovation with this zipad, snapping of the result and uploading them. So what that meant was that as soon as the results were counted at the polling unit level, entered into the form, EC8, the sheet, result sheet, snapped and uploaded. It was open for every Nigerian to see.
So it was for you, it was a transparent election?
No, absolutely. I don't know if you had a chance to log into...
I did.
Did you see all of those results?
I saw them.
So who could have manipulated INEC system?
What do you have to say to react to that?
Election goes beyond voting on that voting day, actually. If you want to ensure fair and fair election, then you must make sure that the parties involved are at the same level in terms of access to security, in terms of access to INEC officials. Now, for instance, in my ward, PDP members, they truncated the voting on that day, and they said there would be no voting for no reason. I tried to call numbers. Yes.
Which local government is this?
Wonder local government, specifically Ward 2, specifically Uhi Town.
Okay, so just a moment. We need to take a break. And when we come back, the victors are jubilating and the losers are reviewing the process. What has come out of this Edo governorship election is what we are reviewing and assessing and looking forward to the future of the people of the state. What are your thoughts? Join us after this break, everyone, as we continue the conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us right here on Channels Television Sunday Politics. I have Honorable Omorege Ogbede Hiyama, a member of the House of Representatives, and you were the officer for your party.
Yes.
Your party agent earlier today. Yes. And also we have Mr. Dan Osa Ugbege. He's a member of the APC. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. You were saying that
yes.
What happened in your Ohunde.
Even in my ward, in Ohunde. Now, the areas where they actually, did a lot of things to jeopardize us were mostly in the bucolic areas, the rural areas. Yeah. For instance, our stronghold of Orion, they make sure they neutralize people who they felt were going to bring a lot of votes to us. And they were able to attack Oza and make sure a lot of people were disenfranchised after they removed their leader. Now, when you strike the shepherd, the sheep will scamper.
So you went, the statement of the president when he said this election was free and fair, are you doubting that, or you're saying that was not correct?
I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying.
So when the president said it's a free and fair election, is it true or not?
I've not even read. I've not read what the president said.
Okay, I actually showed everyone because the president said his commitment to free and fair election is firm, because without free and fair elections, the foundation of our political and moral authority will be weak. So the president is not aware of some of these that you're talking about.
I wouldn't know, but the president is in Abuja. We are here. We are here in Edo State. We are in Oriomo. We are in Honde. We are in Isaka West. We are in most of these places where these things happened. For instance, there was basically no election in Oriomo. Most of the places where they knew we were going to win with landslide, they attacked the place with gunmen. They beat up our members, our agents, and drove them away.
So the PDP used federal might against your party?
And carted away election materials. And we were surprised. There were even places where they cancelled, and results came out from nowhere, and they collected results for those places. I can mention Upato Ward, for instance, and I don't want to mention names, but there are known PDP leaders in Upato Ward who attacked our members, who attacked our agents, and carted away ballot papers. Some of them even burnt INEC materials, and results were magically announced.
So when Honorable Ihama said that this is perhaps one of the freest and fairest elections.
Of course, that's why we say, because his party was declared winner. The PDP has been out of power and out of government for 13 years, and they can't just wait to get into government, and that was why they had to get in bed with Godwin Obaseki, who I see as a strange bedfellow to the ideas that the PDP initiates.
All right.
The PDP is a party of leaders, but this is a person, of course, it will be hard for him to be able to really, maybe I can give them maybe 3 or 4 months, right, and they will fall apart.
So let me quickly ask you, and I would like Honorable Ihama to also respond to it.
Yes.
Some of the reactions that have showed is the outcome. For example, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar says that this election, by implication, is an end to godfatherism in the politics of Edo State.
I laughed when I read it, when he said that there is an end to godfatherism. He himself is a godfather to many people. There's nowhere in the world where you will not have some political personalities playing the role of godfathers to other people. It's in everywhere. It's in every country. Even the bastion of democracy in the world, in the US, you have super delegates. And these are people referred to as godfathers. But the point is that now there are negative connotation to it, and there are also positive connotation. What Godwin Obaseki did, perhaps he maybe engaged media strategists, and they told him that the way he could reach out to more people is to say they are disturbing me because I'm not sharing money,
All right.
and I want to aid godfatherism.
Okay, so
that was a cash phrase.
Let me allow Honorable Iyama
Yes.
to come in. How do you react to, for example, the comment made by former Vice President Atiku Abubakar that this is an end to godfatherism in Edo State?
Oh, well, apparently, I'm sure that even the blind can see. The Vice President's statement is spot on. Godfatherism in the sense that the governor was a governor in APC, and every Nigerian saw what transpired during the screening process of APC, and how the same governor who was cleared about 4 years ago for the same position was basically put on TV, on national television every hour, disqualified by the High Court and the Supreme Court of the APC National Working Committee. So talking about the end of godfatherism, you're talking about things like that. You're talking about loads and loads of statements, accolades given to Godwin Obaseki about 4 years ago, or 4 years ago, then coming again to say, oh no, I made a mistake. Oh no, come on. This election is not just about godfatherism. This election was a movement that was beyond the APC, beyond the PDP. It was about the Edo people. If you notice what happened, the turnout, how resolute the people were to defend their votes, how they stood firm. I was the agent. And every result that came in, I had copies. From the copies, I tallied with what INEC had right up in their portal, and I waited for the collation officers to read their own result, and they all merged.
So when he said that your party skewed this election, I mean, your party he made several allegations. How do you react to those allegations?
Well, for me, I think that this is not really the time for us to be talking about if the party skewed, because I just explained a process to you. It's okay for my friend to feel, they wanted to win, and I understand. It didn't happen, but the people spoke.
But are you surprised by the figures?
No, I expected more.
You think
I expected
Godwin
more.
Obaseki could have had more votes than he had?
Absolutely. Like, I represent Oredo Federal Constituency, and the difference between the APC vote and the PDP vote was 25,000. I was a little bit, well, it's all good. I expected about 35,000 from my constituency. But I think what INEC has come up with now has given more credibility. Because if you talked about a quarter of the total number of picked PVCs as a turnout, that's not good enough. But now, because people didn't believe in the process, now you can believe that you know that when I vote and it's counted, it's uploaded, while I'm walking home, I can check on my Android.
So you think that the people's vote counted this time around?
Oh, absolutely. And more people will come out to vote as we go. It's a work in process. Let me commend INEC. Let me use this same opportunity to thank all Edo people for coming out en masse to stand firm, to vote for the PDP and to support Godwin Obaseki, especially my Oredo people who always will never disappoint me.
But on a larger scale, what do you think the implication of Godwin Obaseki getting a second term, what does this mean for Edo people?
Well, I think it's the product or the outcome of that movement. It's going to span spheres. For example, talking about godfatherism and all of that, I think all that will gradually be put to an end. The people should have free will to choose who should lead them, and a few persons shouldn't sit in a living room to take such decisions. All that will be put to an end. Then moving Edo forward and getting Edo back on track is just a continuity, in all that he had been doing, from human capacity building, training of teachers, infrastructural development, renovation of schools, attracting investors. So he's just going to continue from what he's been doing. The only difference is that he's actually left the APC, where he was choked up with a godfather, to enter the PDP, and now he's a PDP governor where we work as a team.
The implication for you that Godwin Obaseki is going to be a governor for another 4 years?
Yeah, but very quickly, let me correct some statements that were made. In this election, the voter turnout was no more than the voter turnout in 2016. For instance, in Edo, where it comes from, the total vote cast in 2016 was 67,000 and a fraction. In this election, the total vote cast was less than 60,000. So that means more people actually came out in 2016 than they came out in 2020. So that means there is voter apathy in his local government. In my local government, for instance, the total vote cast was 21,000 and a fraction. But in this election, the total vote cast was just about 16,000. So, and it is the same thing for many of the other local governments, probably even all the other local governments. And to also put a lie to the point that they try to make, that there was a movement. It was just using the cliche, putting an end to godfatherism, was just a mantra, to hoodwink Edo people to vote for Godwin Obaseki. And of course, I won't lie to you, some people were carried away that, we must end godfatherism. We must end godfatherism. Now, you now ask yourself, is Godwin Obaseki not already a godfather in his government, where many council chairmen were removed whimsically by Godwin Obaseki because they did not support his second-term ambition? Democratically elected council chairman, for instance, the council chairman of Isako West and some other local governments, even Ego, that they removed until she decided to support Obaseki and they brought her back.
Right.
So that shows that Godwin Obaseki himself is a godfather,
right,
and he did not actually believe in stopping godfatherism, but he's just used it as a tool to try and get re-elected. So that he will now become the ultimate godfather.
We need to wrap up.
What you said, now,
yeah.
To your question, what is the implication for Edo people? The Edo people will see in these 4 years, for instance, if he continues, because don't forget that the APC has a pre-election case at the Federal High Court, and it's a very potent case that they have against Godwin Obaseki and his deputy. It's a case of eligibility, that he was not eligible to even contest on the election, him and his deputy, because of
we're out of time on this segment. Yeah, so I'll take that as your final word.
Yes.
Let me get your final thoughts on this. Going forward, 4 years, what does this mean? A new face, a new era for the people of Edo State, a big burden on the shoulder of the governor?
No, absolutely. Yes, a new face, new movement, new processes and systems. And I think that Edo people should be set to get good governance, development, infrastructural, both human capacity, and all of that. For me, I think that we don't want to go into pre-election or pre-election. Today, Obaseki was declared the winner of the election, and come November, he'll be sworn in, and I think that we'll take it from there.
All right. I must sincerely thank both of you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
But a new wine, an old wine in a new bottle will still taste like the old wine.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dan Osa Ogbege.
Thank
you so much. Honorable.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for
Fantastic politics of Edo State. Very interesting. And I must sincerely say, I've enjoyed every bit of covering this election, myself and my colleagues. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
So let's look at the election more critically and what INEC has done and perhaps what they haven't done. And so let's get Mr. Festus Okoye, who has since joined us from our Abuja studio, who is the National Commissioner in charge of Publicity and Voter Education. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Okoye. I guess your VG moment has passed, and you perhaps will have some clear eyes now because the election is over. Of course, you'll be preparing for Ondo. But if you look at it, it does look like there was voter apathy. What could have caused that, Mr. Okoye?
At the appropriate time, we are going to do an analysis of the voter turnout in relation to the Edo election. But from our own analysis and from our own observation, there was a lot of enthusiasm on the part of the people, and the people turned out en masse to cast their vote and exercise their democratic franchise. But as you know, the last voters registration exercise was done quite a while ago, and because of the challenges of COVID-19, a lot of quite a few people might have stayed away, and then there are also people who have moved from their natural habitat or from places where they used to be to different places. So a lot of things could account for it. But at the appropriate time, we are going to do an analysis and see what accounts for maybe what you call voter apathy in relation to this election.
All right, Mr. Okoye, from the point of view of INEC, you've heard a lot of what people have said. Of course, we'll be looking forward to Ondo and what the takeaways from this election to Ondo State. But what lesson would you say is the major lesson for INEC out of this Edo election?
Well, for us, the major lesson is that it is much more honorable and more fundamental for us to keep to the mandate given to us as a commission, and that is to organize, undertake, and supervise election. You know, before this particular election, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, made it very clear that this commission is irrevocably committed to the conduct of free, fair, and transparent election. And that is exactly what we have done. We have recorded what I call incremental but qualitative improvement in our processes and in our procedures. And we intend to improve on some of these processes and procedures as we move towards the Ondo governorship election that will take place in a few weeks' time.
Let's hear from our friend who covered the elections on the ground in terms of election observation. Mr. Biodun Ajijola is the National Coordinator of Election Monitor and Election Observer. He joins us now in our studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Ajijola. Good to see you again. Let's look at some figures that you have broken down and you have squeezed out for us here. You will make a comparison between the cancellation of the election of 2016 and election of the yesterday. There are 2.91%, isn't it, and 1.26. Give us a sense of what that means. There were more cancellation in the last election, isn't it?
Yes. Good evening. Thank you for having me. So when we want to look at an election and make an assessment of whether it's credible, there has to be a benchmark. Because if there's no benchmark, it's very difficult for you to say if it was an improvement or if it was worse. So you have to benchmark it to something. And there must be different criteria as well. We must assess it based on different areas. So one of them is cancellations. And why is cancellation important? Because cancellation gives us an idea of the level of non-compliance. So for example, things that cause cancellations include things like overvoting, violence, and all manner of things. Now, in 2016, we had a high level of cancellations in Edo State governorship election. I think we had a total of about 55,000 cancellations. While in this very election, the cancellations have dropped significantly to some figure around 27,000 or thereabouts. Now, if you take it as a percentage, that if you calculate the percentage of cancellations to total registered voters, you'll find out that for this very election, we had just about 1.3% of cancellations to registered voters versus 2.9%, which is less than half. What it tells you is that this election was much less violent, much more peaceful, much greater compliance, much greater conformity with INEC guidelines, regulations, electoral act from this election than what we had in 2016.
I know Mr. Festus Okoye will be happy where he's sitting because the figures are tilting towards perhaps a good conduct for INEC, but we'll get a sense of what this means, and we'll come back after this break to talk more on the Edo governorship election of yesterday and the implication for Nigerian future elections. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, everyone. For staying with us, we have in our Abuja studio Mr. Festus Okoye. He is the National Commissioner of INEC in charge of voter education and publicity. Of course, we'll be talking about whether or not people were not properly educated and they don't have enough information as to why we have some kind of low turnout. Of course, we have our friend from Election Monitor, Biodun Ajijola, who's breaking down some figures for us tonight. You were saying you looked at the issues of the cancellation and you said it's one of the benchmarks to analyze whether or not an election is successful.
Yeah.
By that, we can tick yes, that by that issue of cancellation, lower cancellation, this election had a pass mark.
Yes, because it's much less cancellation. We know what the cancellation means is that something went wrong. You don't cancel a polling unit if nothing went wrong, maybe overvoting, violence, and all of that. So when we have in this election such lower volume of cancellation than we had in the previous election, 2016, it clearly shows us that this is less violent and more in line with what is required by law. But secondly, we also had rejected votes, much less. We had 12,834 rejected votes, whereas in 2016 we had 30,000. That's less than half of the rejected votes. Rejected votes is also an indication that something is not very okay. Either the voters are not able to know how to thumbprint effectively, or something went wrong, in the course of administration of the conduct by the polling officials. So where you have such reduced number of rejected votes, it's also very, very positive. Then in addition to that, we have voter turnout, and then many people will say, wow, the voter turnout was much less. That is true. This is probably, not even probably, it's the lowest voter turnout in the past 5 years.
In Edo State.
In Edo State. We had 31.7% in the 2015 presidential election. It went down to 32.3%, up to 23.2% in the 2016 Edo governorship election, 27.9 to 24.1. So what I think is that over time, especially with some of the challenges we've had in some of the elections last year, for example, I think there has been general apathy by voters, not just in Edo State, in Nigeria. So I think that is what is causing this level of apathy. But despite that apathy is there, you can see from other indices that there's actually a significant improvement in the election based on data.
All right, just a moment, Mr. Ajijola. Let me bring Mr. Okoye back into the conversation. Mr. Okoye, are you worried with this trend of reduction in voter turnout? There is an obvious voter apathy. If a third rather, of the PVC collected, the people who went to vote yesterday, isn't there a problem there?
Well, I think that, yes, there is a problem, but that problem is not peculiar to Edo State alone. It's a Nigerian problem. It's a problem of our electoral process. It's a problem of how we can, as a people and as a nation, improve on our electoral process and re-engage our people back to the electoral process. You will also recognize that this particular election was conducted under the shadow of a pandemic, in which over 70 countries, including developed countries, postponed their elections on account of the fact that they didn't want any serious challenges, any major health problems. So I believe that as we move ahead, as we go ahead in our democratic process, and as our elections continue to improve, as we continue to make incremental gains, as our people begin to re-engage with the electoral process, begin to repose confidence, both in the electoral management body and in all the other bodies engaged in electoral administration, people will begin to come out to exercise their democratic franchise. But whether there's a problem, I agree that there's a problem. Whether there is room for improvement, I say there's room for improvement. And we have to work hard in order to get the Nigerian people to believe that when they come out to come and cast their votes, that their votes will definitely count. And that is exactly the direction we are headed.
I'd like you to react to two statements, Mr. Okoye. One coming from the APC in Edo State saying that the election was skewed against them. That INEC work in cahoots with the opposition to skew the election against them. How officially, what is the INEC's reaction and stand on that statement?
Well, you see, there are three things that underline this particular election. The first is that we operated from the basis of inclusiveness and consultation in all our preparations. For instance, even before we distributed sensitive materials to the various local governments, we had a meeting with all the political parties where we agreed on the modalities for the distribution and how these sensitive materials should be distributed. Secondly, we carried out what I call early preparation. We deployed the non-sensitive materials and batched them even to registration area levels, even a month before the election. And the political parties were carried along in relation to what we were doing. We also carried out robust training of our ad hoc staff so that they can understand our processes and our procedures and make less mistakes in relation to this particular election. And more fundamentally, more importantly, we made sure that everything we did in relation to the election in Ondo State was very transparent. And the results we uploaded in our portal was very, very transparent. And every Nigerian who wanted to could log onto the portal and then see what was going on. Even before we started the uploading the results, over 20,000 Nigerians had logged onto the portal. And when the results started coming in, over 40,000 Nigerians had logged on to that particular portal. And it became the people's portal where people saw at a very first hand what was going on at the various polling units. And so I think that in relation to this election, the commission was very, very transparent. We don't have a candidate in this election. We don't support any political party. Our business is to follow through with our processes and procedures and organize, undertake, and supervise elections. And
all
that
right.
is the only all we do.
Mr. Okoye, let me come back to the studio here with Mr. Ajijola. You pointed out some things, some lessons. So a lot of it are for INEC.
Yeah.
If you could quickly just touch on those things that you pointed out as a takeaway from this election.
Well, first of all, we had much less card reader failure. So INEC did a very good job because now we had a RATEC sometimes even within the vicinity of where election was being conducted. And some of the POs even had some knowledge on how to reprogram and things like that. So you don't have to call the SPO, supervisory presiding officer, to now call a RATEC to come. So that significantly reduced the number of failure of card readers significantly. Secondly, there was mixed compliance with the protocols of COVID-19 because, you know, it has to do with a new thing. But at the point of voting, most people had masks and the sanitizer. But when they left the polling units, we had the changes. Then we found out that the competence of the polling officials was generally very high. Most of the places we went to, they knew how to use the card reader, they knew how to do what they were supposed to do. But the most impressive thing of this election that can redefine Nigerian election is the transparency that came with uploading the polling unit results. At that point, it becomes very difficult to manipulate the process. And that was a particular portal that, you know, worked very well. The only challenge is that INEC must ensure that for areas that have poor coverage of data, they ensure that such places, either at the ward, if you can't do it at the polling unit, are able to send in the results so that you have the complete polling units in before election is before the
Ajijola,
declaration.
I'll put you on the spot.
Yes.
Is this the best election Nigeria has conducted?
I haven't seen a governorship election as good as this in 10 years. Yeah, I haven't seen.
All right.
And it's based on data. It's not emotional, it's data.
Okay, yeah. Great. Let's wrap up now. And in 30 seconds, Mr. Okoye, if you can give us INEC's reaction to President Buhari. President Buhari has come out to say that he's the advocate for free and fair election. What did President Buhari do to INEC or do for INEC? Did he work with you? And what are the things that stand this election out from this administration's efforts?
Well, all the national commissioners were appointed and given specific duty constitutionally. And our duty is to organize, undertake, and supervise elections. And in this particular venture, we are not accountable to anybody other than to the Nigerian people and to the oath we swore. And that is exactly what we have done. We have moved away from the Edo elections now. Our main focus is on conducting the Ondo governorship election. We want to show that our performance in Edo State was not a fluke. And so we are going to improve our performance in relation to the Ondo governorship election. So we want to thank everybody who has commended the commission for the transparency and orderliness and peaceful nature of this particular election in Edo State. And we urge Nigerians to give the commission the benefit of doubt, and we will not disappoint.
Mr. Festus Okoye, the National Commissioner in charge of voter education and publicity, thank you indeed for coming tonight. And Mr. Abiodun Ajijola, the National Coordinator of Election Monitor and Election Observer on the ground here, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's our show for today from the city of Benin, where we have been covering the elections for you. I told you, we promise you, we will cover this election, we will bring you up to speed, and yes, we delivered on our promises here at Channels Television, your home for the news. That's the bit that we can give you tonight on the program. Thank you everyone for watching. It's bye from all of us here in Benin City.